So thank you so much for joining us tonight for the for our presentation of Do You Speak Tech, the Pandemic Edition, presented by the Second Language Intercultural Council, as well as the ERLC, so Edmonton Regional Learning Consortium. And Mr. Briggs Joe, yes, we will be sharing the recording. I'm guessing the ERLC will put it up on their website, and I believe it will be up on YouTube as well once they do their magic with it. It may take a couple days. So we have the bit.ly, the short link in there for the presentation. So if you want to access any of the links to websites that we're looking at, and you know, further on it, as well as even the speaker notes, there it is. And I'll remind you of that link again a few times throughout the session. It will be up on some slides again. If you have your son is driving and you can't take notes, that's okay. You just concentrate on your son driving you home, Joe, and getting you home safe, and watch this recording when you have some timing. That's the great thing about online PD, is that we're able to go back and watch it when we might have a little more time, pause and, you know, re-listen to things. And I think that's maybe one silver lining out of this whole pandemic, is that we've learned how to do a little more online PD, and it's becoming easier and easier. So if you have not heard of or have not you know, signed up for the other sessions in this series, we will be having kind of one almost every week between now and the end of March. And so if you go to the ERLC websites or click, there's a link on this image here that you can use to get right to register, or again, watch them later when you have time. So today we're going to be reflecting on strategies for authentic engagement in the target language through computer-assisted language learning, or through technology integration in our classrooms. And our first session, we're going to be kind of breaking up into these sections. So start some very quick introductions and a little bit of research, just sort of that will be sprinkled throughout, but I'll show you which Canadian publications will kind of be grounding our discussion tonight. And before we get into the meat of, you know, implementing technology, I want us to talk about why technology in the classroom. I think it's nice to start with, you know, why are we even here, and kind of give us a bit of background on that. And then we will be going on to talk about some key considerations for integrating technology, or which has kind of affectionately become called the teacher talk with technology. And one of our big sections tonight is going to be when in doubt, finding help. So really talking about when you're looking to implement a new technology, how can you start? Where do you learn? How, you know, how are you supposed to figure out how to use Flipgrid or Kahoot, or, you know, whatever app or website, you know, is the in thing right now. And then we'll have a little bit of time to try. And then throughout the session tonight, we will also have some time to sort of, you know, look at some different technologies, and, you know, there'll be a few kind of little activities to engage you that hopefully you can take back to your language classrooms. So just very quickly, my name is Stephanie Jackson Bezio. I work at Edmonton Public Schools at the Institute for Innovation in Second Language Education, where I coordinate and support the French programs there, and also support teachers of second languages and bilingual and French immersion programs. I also volunteer for SLIC and for the Alberta Teachers Association, and they've partnered up with the ERLC to have this session and this series presented. And I love educational technology, mostly because not only did I find that it was engaging for students, and just super cool. Sometimes we get to do things like virtual reality, or, you know, find a really neat app or website that works well in your classroom. But I also really appreciated the efficiency of technology and how it was helping me work a little bit smarter. So my email, please do not hesitate to email me if you have questions, or, need some guidance or inspiration, or, anything related to technology and second languages and just want to reach out. No problem. I'm currently on maternity leave, so I'm really looking forward to talking to some adults. So please don't hesitate to reach out. So here is just a little intro activity to kind of get to know you, and one that you might be able to replicate in your online or distance learning classes. Tell me how you really feel about technology in the classroom. And if the numbers or the emojis here don't represent closely enough, then go ahead and choose one of your own. And so, yeah, this is kind of a neat way to survey students quickly in the classroom. Some 3s, some 4s, 3, but sometimes 2. Yeah, sometimes it depends on the day. I can be everywhere from a 1 to a 5, right? Great, so see a little bit of everything here. And that's actually pretty typical for when we're working with teachers with regards to technologies, that we see some 2 3s, we see some people that are 1 2s and 4 5s, and really all over the board. So again, please don't hesitate to, even if you would like to use this in your classroom, and you want to save 5 minutes, copy and paste the emojis with the number text under them from my slideshow and use them in your own slideshow. It's really not a problem. If I can save you 10 minutes, then that's awesome. Let's get right into things tonight. Looking at the research, there's 2 Canadian publications, excuse me, that I'll be pulling from tonight. And the first one is from CASALT, or the Canadian Association of Second Language Teachers. And so they've recently, one of the great things to come out of 2020, maybe one of the only, is this literature review on facilitating language learning through technology. And so $7 for members. And if you're not a member of CASALT, I do recommend them for some great high quality resources, and very easy to read literature review research that's got, I think you'll find through some of these quotes, some really kind of rubber hits the road research. So some things that might actually give you some ideas of what to do in your classroom. The second publication is one from actually where I work at ISLE, and this is a literature review on the characteristics of successful quality second language programming. And so if you click on the link there, you can download that for free from Edmonton Public Schools, from their resource hub. And sort of a bit of a hidden tech tip there is that resource hub at Edmonton Public Schools, sort of shameless promotion for my own district, but you will find quite a few resources for language teachers in there. So for example, the Communicative Targets, yes, I'll put the bit.ly in here again. So the Communicative Targets for FSL is sort of a snapshot document that shows all of the or not all, but sort of a summary of the outcomes for French second language in Alberta at each grade. And so there's some really neat things that you can do with that. For example, we've had teachers take that into their classroom and use them as a self-assessment. And so kids might color in the kind of ICAD statements that they're able to meet, and that kind of thing, sort of do a little self-assessment there. Anytime Help Anywhere is our district's initiative to provide support for junior high students doing homework at home. And so there's, and you'll see, we also have some videos in French, so for French immersion. And so, even if you're teaching a lot of times the second language teacher has also got some math or social studies or, other things on their plate. And this is one way that you can, bring that help into the classroom and take a little bit off your plate, hopefully. So yeah, take a look. So getting into the why here tonight. Yeah, there's that bit.ly again at the bottom in case you need to see it again. So do you speak tech 2021 after the bit.ly. Now, I'm going to start here. So again, I'm going to give you a little kind of thinking activity, but I don't want you to enter anything into the chat yet. So you are going to prepare your response and you can type it, but don't press enter to send it to the group yet. This is a trick that you can use when you're working with online classes to sort of avoid that whole, I'm not going to answer until I see what everyone else says, you know, thing happening in classes. So taking a look at this GIF or this, you know, animated image, how does this GIF represent the reality of technology in schools? So again, take maybe 1 minute to type out one observation about how this represents the reality of technology in schools today, but do not press enter yet. Okay, if you have a response ready there, we'll have you put it right into the chat. Press enter. So I'm not going to read them all. So take a few minutes and read through those responses there. How the kid's picking up on the new technology faster than the teachers. Like, yeah, it took him like 2 seconds to figure out what to do with this technology, right? So fast. That technology in schools is necessary. This being confused by the smartboard. I remember taking a 2-day course to learn how to use the smartboard my first year teaching. It was not fun. A change happening very quickly. It's always something new to learn. It's another tool in our toolbox, but not throwing out the other things that worked. Definitely. I also I feel for this poor teacher, Bart's teacher, who is going to walk into her classroom tomorrow and wonder where her Blackboard went. And all of a sudden there's a new piece of technology, right? And so sometimes we don't always get a choice in what technology shows up in our classroom, right? And yeah, it's a little more engaging and definitely saves some time for Bart. And then I think that the message that he's writing is kind of apropos, very on point as well. I will not fight the future, right? Another thing that comes to mind when I think about technology in classrooms is, I mean, this might look like a super old classroom, but I remember when I went to school, it was the same. The technology, we had a computer lab, so you would all go to the computer lab to sometimes do like a computer assignment. But if not, it was having that TV being rolled into the classroom, right? And however, I don't know that you would see many classes that lack as much diversity as we see in this classroom here. There's a lot of very similar looking children in this classroom. This gentleman in the bottom right who's just so excited to take notes after watching on the TV, right? This idea of that one technology for the entire classroom, and that there's no interaction between the technology and the students, right? The technology is there to impart information and the students are there to receive it. And then like traditionally, the teacher would not have had much hand in creating the technology that's being displayed, right? Besides, choosing which video you're showing, you're not actually creating them, right? Which would be different from today. And I think this idea of the zombie apocalypse seems maybe a little more on point for today. But I would like to propose that maybe this gentleman here in the front is actually checking out his math Google Classroom and he's looking for his homework. And maybe this guy here in the red top and the gray pants, he's actually using the word reference app to look up a word so that he can write his new friend in Spanish on WhatsApp. And then I think this gentleman in the orange t-shirt, I'm pretty sure he's looking up like knitting tutorials on YouTube. Right? We're not really sure what they're doing there yet. And then why technology? Because 2020, I tried writing a song about it, but I can't think of anything that rhymes with ugh. Right? It's proved, just 2020 proved to us just how important I think technology can be for today and in the future. And being able to make the best out of technology is becoming more and more important, right? For everybody. But of course, these teachers who, thinking that never would have imagined themselves passing or spending, 90% or even, a large chunk of their time teaching through technology or this online learning, teaching from home, and just sort of got pushed into that so fast and just have adapted so incredibly well. It's just a real testament to your hard work and your adaptability. And then, you ask a teacher how distance learning is going so far. 1 hour here is 7 years on Earth, or 7 years in the technology, right? And so hopefully we can show you some strategies for today, and maybe even some specific technologies that can take some of this burden and off of your shoulders, and maybe save you some time when you're looking at doing technology and bringing technology into the classroom. And coming back to the research, we show that the research has shown us that there's so many benefits to using computer-assisted language learning or technology in a language classroom. And so being able to bring that into your classroom and really make the most of it, and bringing out, that individualized instruction, and at the same time as you kind of get both sides of the coin. You get the students who are working autonomously, but you can also, have more collaboration when you've got that technology being used in the class. And so just, coming back again to that kind of that idea of that not only are you giving them more autonomy, and, more specifically, the use of mobile devices is leading to more learner autonomy and more, these students being able to take the learning outside of the classroom, and then also where they're able to collaborate outside the classroom, right? And then we also see that it's helping them self-regulate their language learning as well. So that's sort of just another piece that's bringing in for that mobile technology. I think it's pretty clear that technology, and communication has changed with technology. And I think a lot of us can relate to this, moms thinking or saying, I haven't gotten 2 words out of Jeremy this week. It's ridiculous. Sometimes I wonder if he's even able of communicating. But then when you look at all of this communication that's actually happening up here, it's just in the background and we might not see it, right? Because technology has fundamentally changed how literacy and communication, or what they are nowadays, right? We read different kinds of texts. We read them on different kinds of devices. This idea of hypermedia, right? And I bolded this last statement because this really resonates with me, this idea of the digital media leading to our students being able to meet in these online spaces with people from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds, and being able to talk about and share their interests with people from different cultural and linguistic backgrounds. And when we think about that, isn't that really the goal of our language programs, that students be able to connect with people from different backgrounds, right? And I think sometimes we might think, like, what are they doing online? What's going on here? What are they doing? They're showing you things, they're telling jokes, they're creating content like photos and videos with text or with, audio on them. They're resolving problems, sharing ideas. They're making instant connections with other people, right? And more importantly, they're talking about themselves. And when I look at this, when I look at these statements and these, things of what students are actually doing on TikTok and Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube, it makes me think of authentic communication. And I see a lot of these communicative functions of talking about talking about yourself and making connections and resolving problems. I see that in my curriculum, in the curricula for second languages across Canada. And this idea that authentic communication is what we want students to be able to do in the target language. So looking for the authentic communication that from the moments that we can bring in from these social media, from these new technologies into the classroom, is not only going to motivate our students because it's bringing their interests into the classroom more, but it's also going to offer them more authentic and deeper learning opportunities in the target language and really encourage these deep connections with the cultures. Okay. So that's sort of my little soapbox speech about why we're using technology in the classroom. And I actually see that I'm ahead about 2 or 3 minutes. I want to take a moment and see if there's any questions or any concerns or maybe any comments that you would like to share with the group. I'm just going to stop sharing here so that I can see everyone. If you'd like to type something into the chat or even unmute yourself and share with the rest of the group. It looks like we're just so far so good. Excellent. Okay. Let's keep going on. Oh, here we go. Yes. I just needed more wait time. Now I know how the kids feel when I ask a question. I know, right? Yeah, totally. There's a lot of memes going around about, teachers on Zoom and that. It's fun. Okay, next we're going to talk about some considerations. So before we get into, use this technology for this, or, I want us to talk about what we need to keep in mind when we're selecting technologies. And before we get into what the research says, I'm going to give you this what's become called the teacher talk with technology, and just sort of some personal anecdotes and some personal advice before we get into something so serious. We work with a lot of teachers who feel guilty that they're not using enough technology in the classroom. And let's just start by getting rid of that negative energy. There's no place for that. It's just, not productive. And so we're just not going to feel guilty about not using enough technology. And you're here today. And so that's already a huge step. And that's great. And most students would tell you that they're super proficient at technology. They might be able to figure out how to use any app or website within a minute because they're these digital natives and we're supposedly these digital immigrants. But that's a little bit of a myth. So yeah, they're great at pushing buttons, figuring out how the app or the website works within a few minutes, but they're also great at consuming technology. Turns out they need our support and our guidance when it comes to learning with technology. So they're great at going down the rabbit hole of funny cat videos on YouTube, not so great at searching out culturally appropriate sources for learning the language or learning more about a culture and things like that. And then always, always, always keeping in mind when we're bringing in a technology, what time are you using, or what class time are you using to learn about how to use the technology? There's some pretty neat websites out there, but if you're spending most or a large chunk of your language class time learning or teaching the students, not in the target language, but in English or French or whatever the first language is in your classroom, teaching them how to use the technology, and there's not a lot of language learning coming out, then you need to be very cognizant of that, and keeping in mind that the most important thing is the learning, right? So one more thing I wanted to mention with that is kind of get more bang for your buck by teaching how to use the technology in the target language. Like, it's probably going to take you twice or 4 or maybe 100 times longer to teach the kids how to use a website, or, for example, how to even with little students or even junior high students at the beginning of the year, how to go get their Chromebook and log on to the Google Classroom. That might take you 2 or 3 classes in a Spanish second language classroom to do that in Spanish or in French or whatever the target language is. But remembering that that is not lost time. You're learning curriculum, you're giving them super authentic language. They're learning about how to use the technology. And when you're teaching them in the target language, the vocabulary and the phrases for how to use the technology, that's super authentic. And so, yeah, it takes a really long time, but it's not wasted time. There's one thing, especially if you're on that sort of 1, 2, 3 end of the emoji scale there from the beginning, technology is maybe, a little scary for you. This is the one thing I would really like you to take away from tonight, is that user-friendly is good and complicated is bad. So technology needs to be there to serve your purposes and make your teaching life easier. If it doesn't do that, then you need to drop it. Long past are the days of going to a 2-day seminar to learn about how to use a specific technology. You're not going to break the app or the website by clicking around. So, you kind of jump in and try it out. And I would say, we're going to talk later about tutorials and getting help. But if you're on a normal year, within half an hour of diving into a new technology, you can't see how it could be implemented into your classroom. And then I would say maybe this year we're all a little bit extra stressed, and so maybe 15 minutes. And after 15 minutes of playing around, you don't have some kind of idea how this could, be used to teach the language in your classroom, drop it. Come back later. Hopefully Google will buy them and they'll become easier, or a new website will come along. And so most importantly, the language learning has to come first, right? When we're talking about bringing in technology into any classroom, the learning has to come first. And so we're talking about our language classrooms. We're always in the back of our mind thinking, how is this technology building language proficiency? What curricular outcomes is it targeting? Is the technology bringing in some authentic cultural or, some native speakers into the classroom? Are the students producing some language? Are they listening or reading authentic samples of the language? And how are you going to assess those skills? Right? And so the research is also pretty clear that we need to consider, the pedagogical implications of any technology that we're bringing into our classroom. Okay, we're going to talk briefly about the SAMR model. One, to introduce it, and then two, just some considerations here. So the idea for the SAMR model is sort of that there are different levels of technology integration. So when we think about it, we start at the bottom here. We've got this substitution where the technology is not really making any functional change. So for example, you can use, Google Maps to look up where a city is instead of going to an atlas. It's a little bit faster, but there's not much functional change to that, right? The augmentation comes when we're, getting a little bit of improvement functionally to that. So when you're using on Google Maps to measure the distance between two places, that's pretty instant. It's a lot faster than taking out an atlas, measuring it with a ruler, making the conversion, et cetera, et cetera. Modification and redefinition, this is where we talk about teaching above the line. So this is where basically the technology is bringing transformation to the task and really changing how we're or what this task looks like in the classroom. So modification, there's a significant redesign. So for example, you could go in Google Maps and you can actually, walk around the towns and cities all around the world and get, 360-degree views. And that's something you can't do with an atlas, right? And then redefinition is really that idea of like creating new tasks that you couldn't even think about without technology. So for example, you've got students who are using Screencastify to video record and audio record themselves walking through the streets of a city in the target culture, and explaining it, and then you can snip all of those together and make it like a collaborative documentary with the class. That's something that you just can't do without technology. So a few different examples, and I'm actually if you check in the speaker notes there's the link to the website where I got this from. So this first one is from Technology is Learning. So they kind of give a very simple SAMR kind of step up to give you an idea of what this could look like. So for that substitution, students are using the technology to print off a quiz at home on paper. They're still completing it on paper and then submitting it to you when they're back in person. That augmentation, so if you're doing your quiz via Google Forms, a lot quicker, you can also get some automatic feedback and things like that, right? When we're talking about teaching above the line, we're getting to the modification redefinition. And so there we're looking at, like modification, what if they write an essay and they could audio record themselves, reading the essay with the soundtrack and, play that for some kind of authentic audience, like maybe another class or for parents or something like that. And then redefinition, that idea of that collaborative documentary where the kids could, come together and each take different parts of a topic and research it and create videos that are going to get snipped together to create this documentary. And so just sort of different ways of implementing technology in the classroom, but don't discount the power of using technology in this kind of augmentation capacity. So for example, the quiz via Google Forms, that is saving that teacher a whole lot of time in providing feedback. It's also providing feedback to students in a more timely manner. So it's not just that it's more efficient and easier for the teacher, but it's actually better for the learning, right? For students, because the research is pretty clear that when students get feedback in a more timely manner, that it's more, meaningful for their learning. And so it's not always that we have to be like above the line in that modification kind of area, right? Another example here that I'd like to share with you is from Peachy Publications. So I'll just give you a moment to take a look at that. So I just had a frog in my throat there. So, whoops, I didn't mean to click that one forward. So for example, that using technology to get an online version of a text is not bringing a whole lot of functional change. Once you're bringing in like what that's supposed to be an and sign, read and write for Google, for example, to highlight and annotate, you're bringing in, augmenting what the technology is really doing when you're reading a text in the target language. Next, looking at modification is you could still with read and write for Google, but bringing in that speak recognition. So maybe having the text read aloud to the student, and read and write for Google Chrome has got more and more languages and accents and things added all the time. It's great. And also maybe doing speech to text, so where the students can use speech to text to write a reflection, share the reflections, and maybe have like a live debate in Google Meet or Zoom or whatever it might be. And then taking it even a step forward, step further, bringing in some social media. So maybe the students are using read and write for Google, so sort of all of the same things as before, but they're also now collaborating online to create some kind of a product that they're going to then share via social media. Then they're going to watch each other's products and, comment back and forth, have some kind of analysis and report at the end. And so really getting the most out of that, out of that text and out of reading the text, and using technology to really stretch that learning as far as you can. But again, keeping in mind that sometimes we would just need them to read a text and we're going to discuss it, and maybe, staying below the line is totally appropriate, just, knowing what your purpose is, right? So again, coming back to what are students doing with the language, and always keeping that in mind. So again, don't underestimate the power of having, having some fast feedback and things for the students, right? And the redefinition, that idea that technology is supporting student-centered learning, collaboration, and communication. And when we think about collaboration and communication in a second language classroom especially, it's just so important, right? Okay. So we're going to get into the talking about where to get help, what to do when you're kind of starting with technologies. Before we move on to there, are there any questions, comments, concerns? Give you a minute or two to see if there's anything else you'd like to share with us. There we go. That's the chat's coming up. So Nina asks, how often are people using technology in the classroom? That's a great question. And then Roxanne's asking, I wonder about the access to technology outside the classroom. Definitely. And I think that that's something that we always have to keep in mind. And especially when we're thinking about, the language learning is coming first, and thinking about UDL, or maybe, universal design for learning, that idea that we're giving some choice for the students, and kind of always having non-digital or non-technology options for them to be able to demonstrate their learning. Right? Because when it comes down to it, the important thing is they be able to demonstrate the language proficiency, right? And so, and it's not always, the technology isn't always the answer, right? So another comment about the SAMR model. I'm using Flipgrid quite a bit. We're going to be using that later on today. It's kind of my new favorite. Moved oral interviews to Flipgrid, yeah. Using word reference, would love to find more resources to practice and enhance French. I use tech every day. We see some that are saying like kind of once a week, and some people saying I use technology every day. And so, yeah, it's a bit kind of all over the board, which is very typical. Besides the teachers having different levels of being comfortable with technology, it also depends on what your school and what your classroom has available for physical technology, what your students have available. The age can matter, not so much in that the littles can't use technology, but that, I mean, in kindergarten and grades 1 to 6, they don't necessarily have their own mobile phones or mobile devices on them. So personally, I taught a lot more in junior high, and so 90% of my students had their mobile devices, and so it was quite easy to just oh, hey, let's do this Kahoot or Socrative and do that kind of on the fly. Whereas that has to be something that's planned out, or unless you have a Chromebook cart or iPad cart or whatever it is in your room. So yeah, it can definitely depend. Excellent. Okay, let's move on here. Oh, I didn't come here. So moving on to finding help. So where do I start? Pick the easy stuff. Pick something really user-friendly, really easy. I highly suggest Flipgrid. If you haven't tried Flipgrid and you're looking for like one technology to try, that's going to be the one that I'm going to recommend today. just because I've used it a few times recently, and I was very shocked at how easy it was for how much you get out of it. So it can be kind of daunting because it feels like it's all on our shoulders as teachers to, know all of the technology. But keep in mind that this is true, with any resource that you bring into your classroom, the effectiveness of the resource is going to depend on the teacher's ability to use and implement it effectively, right? That's not just with technology. The difference with technology is that there's some really great and simple and user-friendly ways to start and to find help. So first, start small. And I mean something simple with a big impact. So like with Flipgrid, your learning curve is like 10 minutes, really. And what you get out of it is so huge that it's really worth the 10-minute investment, right? And then my other kind of huge tip is just to search YouTube and Google. So literally, I tell my mom all the time, like, Mom, just literally Google it. And she's like, well, what do I Google? And I say, you literally Google your question. So like, how do I use whatever the app or website is? Or I even kind of more than Google, I prefer YouTube. I love going to YouTube looking for tutorials. And we have another Flipgrid lover here in the thing. So that's great. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing this screen and share kind of the rest of my screen so that we can take a look at the actual Google site. Just give me a second here. Get this open. There we go. So talking about YouTube for tutorials, I do have a few tips when you are, looking for help on how to, how to use a new app or website. I'm just kidding. There we go. So you can search in the second language, and you'd be surprised how many of these apps and websites have help in the second language, and so that's great. But you're literally just going to search the app or website with tutorial. Now, my big tip is going to be look for the shortest video. So like, if you can explain the basics of your app or website to me in less than 10 minutes, like ain't nobody got time for that, especially no teacher. So like 10 minutes or less, and 5 minutes is even better. 7 minutes, love it. And part one, but that's okay because it'll get me started, right? What's great about YouTube tutorials is you can slow them down. You can watch them again. You can have this in the background on your laptop while you have your phone out practicing on the app, or vice versa. If it's only a computer app, then bring it up on your laptop and have the YouTube tutorial on your phone so you can kind of pause and look. And then also look for a recent one. So for example, Google Classroom has a lot of updates. So you don't want like a Google Classroom tutorial from 2 years ago, because you're probably missing like 100 million new features, and the screen might even look different, right? So yeah, under 10 minutes, but it's 2020, 2021, minute and 27 seconds. And you can kind of already judge, like from Flipgrid, like looking here, we haven't come across many videos over 10 minutes. Some of these people, it's like 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. That's a great indication that this is going to be a user-friendly technology for us to use, right? So literally search YouTube. That's my favorite thing to do. I'm going to give you one more. Now, if you're having kind of problems finding the tutorial, or if all the ones you're coming across are just not great, one thing that you can do is filter by playlist. So what that does is it gives you all of the videos that people thought were good enough to take out and save to a playlist, right? And so it's kind of just a first step of peer review, and so can often, be quite helpful with narrowing down your choices. This also is a great tip when you're looking for cultural videos, or videos that are actually like teaching a concept in the second language. That's one thing that you can do. And then along with using YouTube for tutorials, definitely think about checking out some of the teaching resources and things like that. Some of the PD. There's a lot of things that you can find. So for example, there's a Spanish teacher, his name is Senior Howard. He's really active on Twitter and that, and he's got a YouTube channel, and he's got some great ideas for how to teach Spanish to kids, and in staying completely in the target language. And I never taught Spanish, but I followed him very closely. He had great tips that I would bring all the time into my junior high French classroom, even though he's a Spanish like grade 1 teacher. So, there's some, and then once you start looking at them, you're going to be, going down the rabbit hole and kind of looking at the suggested videos, and you'd be surprised what comes on. So I find a video and I would really love to watch this, but I'm just like, it's 11 o'clock at night. I got to go to bed. I got to, get up the next day. I'm going to save this for later, right? And so under the video, you have a save, and you're going to save that to a playlist. You can save it to watch later, which is just a playlist for you to kind of, like a holding bucket for videos, or you can actually make a playlist specific for, like, this is teaching inspiration, this is French music, this is my cooking videos, things like that, right? Okay. One other tip that I have for you, in the slideshow, you'll see a link there for Adblock. So what that does is it gets rid of those commercials at the beginning of a YouTube video. So that's why you want to be also signed into Chrome. So do you see here at the top of the YouTube page how it says Stephanie Madame Jackson? That means that I'm signed into Chrome. So I'm signed into the like internet browser. And that's going to make it so that it will save all of my bookmarks and things in the future. But also when I add on an extension like Adblock or Accent Grid or whatever, it's going to remember it next time I log in at school, or I log in at my parents' house, or I log in at home, or wherever it might be. And so just keeping all of your settings and getting rid of those commercials. I noticed that the commercials started to give me problems with Easy Access add-on. Oh, good to know. Sometimes what you can do is in the Adblock extension, you go into the settings and you can like allow all the time the easy accents, but yeah, it can sometimes get into an issue with the with your accents and stuff, or with different extensions. But yeah, check it out. And then the last thing I wanted to mention with playlists is this new thing about collaborative playlists. So I'm not sure if you know that. So to get to my playlist, I'm going to go up here to the hamburger, and the menu hamburger in the top left-hand corner. And I'm going to go and find like a playlist that I want. I'm just going to pick a random one. And if I go down here to these 3 little dots, because it's kind of hidden, I'm going to click the 3 little dots and I can say collaborate. And I'm going to just turn that on. And it's going to give me this link. So I copy that. And then if I give that to link to my students, for example, they can then add to this playlist. So it adds to my playlist, and then it tells you who added what video. So you're not getting students adding like inappropriate things or whatever, but kind of a neat way to collaborate, and a nice way as well. I'm not sure if it's like this all across Canada, but I know that here in Alberta, we often have students kind of like kindergarten to university level French in the same French second language classroom. So like in a grade 8 FSL or French second language, where they're meeting 3 times a week for an hour, I'll have a student who's francophone, so like who came from a French speaking country, along with a student who's maybe completely new to Canada and so doesn't speak English or French, and kind of every level of French and English in between. And so it's, a great idea for some of those students that might have been former French immersion, or maybe they're francophone, or Spanish is their first language, it's your Spanish classroom, can get them to, create you a playlist of some great cultural videos, music videos, whatever it might be. And that's a kind of a nice way to engage them still in the classroom and engaging with their peers in a way, but not, you know, always sticking up their hand to answer super easy vocabulary questions because they know all the answers already, right? Okay, excellent. Going back, so I'm just gonna stop sharing so that I can go back to the other screen to share. Okay, so moving on. To the next one here. So are there any questions before we move on to kind of this time to try? I've got sort of a neat little new weird technology to talk to you about, and then we're going to try Jamboard, and then we're going to look at some student response systems and Flipgrid. Before we get to that, are there any questions with YouTube, with, you know, looking for tech tutorials or anything like that before we, you know, kind of get started? On the whole, getting to play with the technology thing. I don't know why. Okay, I can't see my chat anymore. There we go. Oop. Okay, there we go. How can students type with accents in Microsoft Teams? Our district uses Teams. So the accent, I use Accent Grid personally, but I'm not super familiar with Microsoft Teams. Does anybody else have any ideas? Easy Accents add-on might work as well. How do we block an ad? So if you even if you Google Adblock for Chrome, you'll come across the first link there. Can get you to. So Accent Grid does work on multiple platforms because what it does is it copies the accent to your like to your clipboard. So then all you have to do is go Control V. It's like you've copied it, and then you go Control V to paste it in. And so, yeah, you can use that in like copy from Accent Grid in Chrome and then paste into, for example, even a Word document or whatever it might be. Yeah. And then if you go into Accent Grid, you can customize it. So for example, just give me a second here. I'll probably be able to show you here. So on my Accent Grid, like I picked all my French accents and I have them. And then when I go shift, it's these ones. I also have like some dots and arrows and just some kind of handy stuff. The Euro, just ones that I found that I used a lot. And then so if I wanted this A, I would just click on it. And then wherever I wanted to enter it, like if it's here in the speaker notes, then I click down there and I go Control V to paste it in, or right click paste. And then if you right click and go to options, then it's going to open up like a grid where you basically, it's like a table and you just put in the accents how you would like them to show up in the accent grid. And so that's how that works there. Okay. Now I see there's something in the chat. I'm just gonna get back to the chat here in a second. There we go. Cool. Excellent. So I'm going to move on to the next thing to try. So this is an idea of a couple of technologies that have come up kind of, or come up for me anyways, and become known to me recently, are the window swap and drive and listen. Another way that you could kind of get this is by looking up traffic cams in different places. So Window Swap is a website, and go ahead, and I'd suggest, going and opening that up in your own window there and take a look while I'm talking. So Window Swap is a place where it opens up a window, like someone's taken a video of their window in a random place in the world. And it's kind of neat. Sometimes you can see their cat, walking in between or walking around and things like that. So it's kind of a neat way to get some different, target culture input, I guess you could say. And then the next one is drive and listen. So with this one, you can choose the city. And so there's quite a few cities around the world. And then there's a few different radio stations. And it's someone's dash cam. So it's like you're driving through Paris or driving through Barcelona, with some, target language, cultural, audio behind, in the background. So you can hear what's going on in the street and or listen to the radio. And so just some ideas that I had with that. Second, I'm looking from the chat here. There we go. Was using that for like very simply having them, kind of that idea of having it in the background so kids think that they're in a different location. Don't underestimate the power of having a different background and making kids think that they're, outside of the classroom. Another way to kind of do that, if you're doing Zoom or Google Meet, kind of having those funny backgrounds can do that as well. Authentic cultural visuals, so you're not having that in the background while kids are working, just sort of giving them the idea that they're like in a different place while they're doing their work, that they're outside of the classroom. And so all of a sudden they're using the target language, but they're not like in the classroom, you know what I mean? Playing a game of I Spy, have some fun with it. Give them a speaking or writing prompt. Like, what do you see? What would you do if you were here? Describe the weather. It doesn't have to be a Spanish speaking location for you to use it in your classroom, right? They could be describing places in their own countries, like in Canada in their own homes, or they can be describing places that are from all over the world, or maybe from, if they've come here to live here from a different country, then, that's super authentic and interesting for kids. And so just sort of a kind of an out of the box idea there when we're looking at technology and a different way to use that. Okay. I'm going to I'll copy the link here and get it into the chat. Just give me a second here, because there's too many windows. And we're going to do a little Jamboard here. So it's also in the presentation if you happen to be on there before I can get the chat open. Oh, sorry. When somebody messages, it has me like just texting to one person. It's weird. Okay, there we go. Now, so Jamboard is a new Google tool. So this is available in in Google Drive. It's kind of like a virtual whiteboard. So I'm going to stop sharing and then bring up the, excuse me, just had a frog come up here. Bring up the Jamboard. And so your very first slide is just like, if you've never used Jamboard before, or if you just like to try it out, it's just sort of a blank slide there for you to try out adding the sticky or drawing or adding some text or whatever. And then when you get a moment, share one or two ideas about how to use technology for reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And you'll see up at the top in the middle, you can click to go to the next frame. And that's how you're going to be able to see the questions there. Just add a sticky note and share, you know, maybe one idea that you have for using technology for reading, writing, speaking, listening, oral interactions. And then this Jamboard will be open for people later to collaborate on, or if you wanted to go back, or you just can't think of a good technology that you'd like to try, or, oh, I'd really like to do some reading in my next class, but I don't know what app or website to try. You can go back to this Jamboard and get some ideas from your colleagues. So give you about 5 minutes to take a look at that and play around. And at the same time, if you've got any questions or comments. Okay. There we go. Let's get this down. Yes, you can insert images. Our math teachers are kind of liking this because of the whole being able to draw. And so if you have this, you know, open on your phone or on your iPad, then you can use your finger or pencil to draw. And then up here, you'll see that you can go forward. So learning vocabulary by playing Pictionary or Hangman, audiobooks in the target language. Yeah, I'm going to add my favorite here is read and write for Google. Read and, oops. And so you've got, you know, text to speech, speech to text. It's got visual dictionaries, glossaries. It's got like everything. It's amazing. It's a really great resource. And I know that a lot of school districts or school divisions have that, have a, you know, license for that. So. Yeah, digital reader. Okay, I'm just gonna move forward, and online dictionaries or translators. Yeah, a curse and a blessing at the same time, right? The online translators. If you're looking for a really good online translator, this new one that we've been using a lot at work is DeepL. And never, ever, ever, ever show this to your students because it's magic. It's unicorn magic, how good it works, how well it works. See in the chat here. "60 ideas on using Jamboard in language lessons." I love that. Thank you. Is it okay, Joe, if I take that link and put it in the speakers notes in case somebody wants to use that? That looks super interesting. Thank you very much. Oh, MFL Twitterati, they're amazing. They have such great ideas. Okay, and I'm going to put this on here. There we go. Thanks. Attribution to Dale, definitely. Thank you very, very much. Alrighty. And so, Bill for translating, great for the teacher, yeah. Getting themselves reading a book on Flipgrid, sharing comments. So see a few on Flipgrid here. I'm loving that. Yeah, and it's free. You gotta love those free technologies, right? Free and user-friendly. It's super great. Lyrics training, French music videos, or whatever target language you're teaching for sure. Videos of myself speaking in French and assign them listening tasks. It's great. Yes, we've got some great ideas here. Yeah. And then you can also expand here to see where everyone kind of is at, which is kind of neat, and you know, see what's being written in them. Okay, one more minute and then we'll go back to the slideshow here.
Steph, quick question.
Definitely.
Yeah, is there any way of setting restrictions on what students can access when they're in Jamboard?
What do you mean, like which slides or what?
No, what tools? So when I tried doing this, because I thought, oh, this is really good. They can, you know, we can do brainstorming or kind of what we're doing here right now. And of course, they saw all of the, oh, I can draw and I can this and I can that. And pretty soon the page was covered in scribbly goop.
Okay, I just presented to adults and that's how I learned to write. That's how I learned to add in the first slide. That's like, here, get your playing out on the first slide. Because yeah, that's what people, especially if you haven't used it before.
Yeah.
And then things can go missing and whatever. And so, yeah, that's one strategy, is having that first slide where it's like, okay, you get 2 minutes to like play.
Yeah.
And then, okay, these are the slides that I want you to, you know, put one sticky per idea, or, you know, and give them those parameters. But yeah, let them get out their sillies.
Yeah, but there's no like view only, can't edit. I mean, a view only would defeat the purpose in a lot of ways, but.
Yeah, you can do view only, but then they can't add anything at all.
Can you do that for specific students if they're not following guidelines?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, of course. So in the link here, you can add specific people. If you're putting this Jamboard into your classroom, then it would have like the class link.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could definitely.
Okay.
If you have to.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so Jamboard's sort of a neat one there. Okay. So student response systems. Now, this slide will be coming up a few times throughout this series, and will be sort of like on different nights, we'll pick maybe a different one to sort of highlight. Tonight, I did want to give you an overview of sort of the differences between them, so that if you are looking to bring in a student response system into your classroom, that you've got an idea of which one might be appropriate for which purpose. So starting on the left are sort of the simpler, and then going to the right, we're getting a little bit more complicated, basically. So when we're talking about student response systems, I knew some of these to begin with, but some of them I actually got by posting on a Facebook group of, you know, Alberta teacher and resource sharing, where I asked, like, what's your favorite student response system? So there's a few of these that were new to me. If you're looking for super fast, multiple choice, no short answer kind of questions or little quizzes or exit slips, then you're looking at over here on the right, so Kahoot, Gimkit, and Plickers, as well quizzes. These are all going to be multiple choice. You're going to get some automatic feedback. So for Kahoot, Gimkit, and quizzes, the students would find out like if they got it right or wrong, basically. The big difference between Kahoot and Gimkit is Gimkit, like you can see from this image, is that the kids see the question and the response written out on their phone. Whereas with Kahoot, the question and responses are written like on the board, and then on their phone, they just sort of see like little shapes that represent the answers, right? So they do have to be able to see the board. So Gimkit might be a little more appropriate, like if you have some students that have some issues seeing the board and that. Plickers is a great option if you don't have Wi-Fi. So like if you're in maybe a portable classroom, or maybe you're in a classroom or in a school that doesn't have super good Wi-Fi, or it's a little bit spotty, you can use Plickers for free. So you go to their website and print off a class set of these little like black and white icons. And like each icon looks a little bit different. And each side of the icon represents like A, B, C, or D. And so the kids would hold up the piece of paper with either the A, B, C, or D side up, depending on what answer they wanted to give. And then the teacher's going to use their phone to like scan the class, or the iPad to scan the class and get the answer. The difference here would be that the students aren't getting like on their device, because there is no device, they're not getting that feedback immediately to them that like they got this right or wrong, but you are getting that yourself for individuals and the whole class. If you're looking at doing more like short answer, or you want a little more writing involved, then you're going to want to look to Socrative or Google Forms. So we still have the multiple choice true and false ideas, but you can also have paragraph and short answer responses. And you can even have feedback for those. So if you're asking students to respond with a phrase or a word in the target language, you can have it give automatic right or wrong and give feedback. For example, in Socrative, for looking for certain words or certain phrases to be contained in that answer. So that's pretty neat. Moving along to Quizlet and Booklet. Those are a little more like game-based learning, basically. So Booklet has got like a selection of games that you can use and modify to teach things in class. And then Quizlet has got flashcards, some games, some learning tools. So it's a little bit more kind of in-depth than just, short answer or multiple choice. When we get to the three on the right here, these are kind of our going beyond like an exit ticket or a quiz, and really like engaging students and having them like collaborate together with Flipgrid, Pear Deck, and Padlet. So I'm going to start at the bottom. Padlet is sort of like having a virtual board. It's sort of like Jamboard, except you can also insert videos and links, and it like basically looks a little prettier than Jamboard, but very similar. Pear Deck is interactive slide decks. So for example, I can take my Google slideshow and make it so that as I'm going through the slideshow, it also goes through on your end and advances the slide. And then I could ask you, multiple choice, short answer, those kinds of questions. But I could also ask you to draw a response. And I could also ask you to drag your cursor onto a response. So for example, I could ask you to drag your cursor onto your favorite student response system. And I could show the whole class, like all of their cursors kind of laid on top of each other, where, quickly see where everybody's kind of voting, I guess. So that's sort of a neat idea. And then finally, we've got Flipgrid here. And Flipgrid is a really super user-friendly tool. I want to say that the learning time on this is about 10 minutes. So I've created for you a Flipgrid. So it's flipgrid.com/DYST, like do you speak tech 2021. And if you have a favorite technology that you'd like to share with us, then do that. If not, just share a message of positivity, encouragement. Hey, stay safe, or here's my cute dog, or whatever it might be. You can, to use this in your classroom, if you use Google Classroom, you can import your classes and then export your Flipgrids onto Google Classroom as assignments, or you can just give them a join code. And of course, you can, enter emails. Kind of simple. Social. Hey, sorry, I'm back. I think I just had a bit of a Wi-Fi issue there. Okay. So yeah, if you have an idea for using Flipgrid in the classroom, please share that with us. Oh. Is my sound okay? Can someone give me a thumbs up? Thank you, Roxanne and Elizabeth. Love it. All good. So how many of these are free? So for example, Pear Deck has a free version. You get the multiple choice and the, I think the short answer. If you want to do the fancy, like the draggable and the drawing, then it's paid. But they, for example, in our school district, they've bought a license for the entire district. So for Edmonton Public Schools, it's free for their teachers right now. Flipgrid, it seems to be completely free. For as much as I've used it, they've never asked me for anything. Socrative is completely free. They've never asked me for money. Same with Padlet, Plickers, Kahoot, Gimkit. I'm the only ones I'm not familiar with are Quizlet, Booklet, and Quizets. But typically they all have free, and then like Dale's or like Joe said, the kind of the premium options or premium features. Oh, thank you, Joe, for sharing a tutorial he did on Flipgrid. That's great. One way that we've been using this, and maybe a way to learn how to use it and also bring that learning into your classroom or into your school, I mean, is we've been using it for like staff retirements or staff parties. So if someone's retiring or has a birthday, then we'll do a Flipgrid and everyone will just give them a happy birthday or a happy retirement message. And then, you know, all of a sudden you've got all these teachers who have tried it and are so surprised how easy it is, and they're using it in their classrooms for, you know, having conversations with students. And I work with some teachers who will do like a weekly Flipgrid with their students where they'll record themselves as a teacher asking 3 questions and then the students respond. And it's not super difficult, super simple questions. The point isn't like about homework or anything, but that they're using the language outside of the confines of the classroom. So they're using their phones to take a selfie video of them answering 3 super, super simple questions, and just, you know, kind of what that does to the mind, that now all of a sudden the Spanish or Chinese or French or whatever language we're learning in the classroom, that's not just for the classroom, that's a language that is used outside of these walls, right? And that can be very powerful for students. So because I got kicked off, I can't share my screen, but that's fine. We don't need to see any more. The last 3 slides, you guys have got that anyway. So I hope that you can take some 10 minutes this week and try out Flipgrid, and I hope that is helpful for you. The last thing I want to mention, and it's again kind of a hidden tech tip in this presentation tonight, is Slides Carnival. So these beautiful slides, and I'm not going to be humble about it because I did not create them. They're free, wonderful, beautiful templates from slidescarnival.com. And so they not only have those nice backgrounds, but all those kind of little happy faces and piggy banks and little kind of icons in that are from Slides Carnival. So completely free, downloading Google Slides or PowerPoint, and they're ready to use. They've got beautiful fonts, and just sort of this one, of course, is a little more because I'm presenting to adults, but they've got some really cool, fun slideshows for students. So some great artwork there, and some great a great resource that's completely free.